Good morning, boys and girls. I wanted to take some time to go over some of your classwork. This comes from a fine school. After you are finished listening to the reading, you are to go through these questions and answer. So let's look at this first question. In the beginning of the story, why does Mr. Keene think his school is a fine school? Use information from the text to support your answer. So we have to go back, and it starts on page 14. Here on page 17, it says how he loves his school. He gives an example. Um, he sees the children learning shapes and colors and numbers and letters. He saw them reading and writing and drawing and painting. He saw them making dinosaurs and forts and playgrounds. So there is a reason that we know that he thinks it's a fine school. So you can, when you're explaining your answer, the information to support, you would say, he thinks it's a fine school because the kids are very actively engaged. Here you can say, according to the text, here's where you're going to give that information. So you might say, according to the text, Mr. Keene walks through the halls and sees children learning shapes and colors and numbers and letters. Okay, so there is your information that you can use. You don't have to use that sentence, you can use any of the examples from page 17. And then our next question is, what is Tilly's problem in the story? How is it solved? Use information from the text to support your answer. So we have to answer this actually we have to answer three things: her problem, the solution, and details to support it. So what is Tilly's problem? Tilly's problem, she's upset because he keeps adding on school. He adds weekends, summers, and holidays. So Tilly's problem is that Mr. Keene has made school mandatory all year round. So if we go to how it's solved, let's see. We know that they start being unhappy, and she goes into his office and talks to Mr. Keene. Here on page 24, she says that, people aren't learning anymore because they're just going to school too often. And Mr. Keene starts to think about that. They haven't learned things that they need to learn that aren't in school, like climbing trees, for example. So the problem is that they're going to school too much and that they aren't learning outdoor things or things they also need to learn. How is it solved? Tilly goes into the office and has a conversation with the principal. And you can use any of these examples that I just told you about. It has a really good ending. He walks up and down the halls and he sees that, kids are unhappy and they haven't learned as much. So at the end, he says all children and teachers need to learn how to climb a tree and sit in it for an hour. He doesn't really mean that, but he understands that learning doesn't always take place in school. So you guys can take anything that I just talked about and use it in your answer. And if you have any questions, send me a message on PowerSchool, okay? I will see